So we're not going to do any formal introductions of the people who are joining us on the call, other than myself, Joanna and Michelle. We'll introduce ourselves just in the interest of time. But if people do want to say hello and mention who they are in the chat, that's absolutely fine. And then obviously the primary aim of this session is it's a question and answer session. So we want you to ask questions and us to give you some answers if we can. If we can't find the answers straight away, then we'll do a little bit of research and we'll come back to you. So if you do want any more information, you can either contact me directly. I'll put my email address in the chat, or you can contact the generic ARC email inbox, which a few people keep their eye on, and they'll forward queries on to us. So if you do have questions, once we've done a short presentation, please feel free to raise your hand and then you can ask the question, or you can type it in the chat and we'll pick them up between us and answer them. But from the outset, I just want to introduce myself. So I'm Ross Atkinson. I'm a research programme manager working with the ARC Greater Manchester. So I work on several themes, capacity building being one of my themes, working with Michelle, who's on the call, and also Penny, who's the deputy lead. So Michelle leads the theme. I also work on two other research themes, so organising care and digital health. So I'll hand over to Michelle just to introduce herself.
Thanks, Ross. Yes, I'm Michelle Briggs. I'm a clinical professor of nursing. That's a joint post between Manchester University and the Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust. And I lead the capacity building theme within ARC-GM. So thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Michelle. And I'll pass over to Joanna just to say hello.
Hi, I'm Joanna Ferguson. I'm the Comms and Public Community Involvement and Engagement Coordinator at ARC-GM.
Thanks very much, Joanna. So I know we'll probably have people joining us over the course of the session anyway. So we'll make a start with a short presentation that Michelle and I have put together, really just to prepare you, just to try and give you a little bit of background about the programme itself. I'm going to share some slides on screen. So let me just share my slides. Hopefully you should be able to see my slides now. If Joanna, if you could just let me know if you can see those okay.
Yeah, if you just put them into presentation mode, yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joanna. So thanks everybody for joining us. I hope you're here for the same thing as we are. So we're just going to give you a little bit of information about the Pre-doctoral Fellowship programme that is open at the moment. And this is one of our schemes that we have going to support building capacity in applied health and care research that we do as part of the Applied Research Collaboration with Greater Manchester. So we've done some brief introductions. You can see my mugshot on there. I'm Ross, the programme manager that looks after capacity building. I work with Michelle, who's introduced herself. Penny Lewis, who's a clinical lecturer in pharmacy, who's the deputy lead of the theme. Beck Elvie is a research fellow, helping us with some of the work that we do. And also Karen Mee, who's a project support coordinator who you might have been in touch with already. Karen helps us with the organisation of a lot of the work that we do. Karen's actually on annual leave today, she would have been here, but Joanna's helping us out as the events coordinator. Thanks again, Joanna. So our pre-doctoral fellowships, they provide research training awards for, it says on that little screenshot there, registered health and care professionals, but actually we've reimagined our scheme a little bit recently to include people from a wider range of backgrounds. So people don't necessarily need to be registered health professionals or care professionals. We'll talk about eligibility in a little bit, but I just wanted to give some of the timelines, the important timelines that we've got coming up over the course of the next couple of months. So applications are open now, and you can find out more about the scheme on the website, the ARC-GM website itself. On that website, there's some guidance for applicants. There's a link to the application form itself, and it also gives a summary of these timelines. Applications close for submission at 5 PM on the 18th of May, so you've got around 2 months to work on your application. And we strongly suggest that you start working on your application now. Also available on the website is a PDF version of the application form, so you can see the questions that are asked there. We're asking people to submit their applications through the online website, so through the online form on the website. If anybody has difficulty accessing that, you can get in touch with us to find out where we can point you in the right direction. But the PDF of the application form is there really just so that you can see the questions without having to click through the whole online form. So the week beginning the 19th of June, we'll be informing applicants whether they've been successful in terms of getting through to the interview stage. We like to interview candidates for the pre-doctoral fellowships just so that we can have a conversation about what your research interests are, give a little bit more information about yourself and your application. And the interviews themselves are planned at the moment for the 29th of June. So if people want to put those dates in their diary, just in case you might be successful in getting through to interview, I think that would be probably a good thing to do now. So we want to try and give you a little bit of time to plan for those dates. So I mentioned a little bit about eligibility earlier. So we're looking for graduates, so people who have done a degree in their discipline, and these can be from a range of health and care backgrounds. Traditionally, we've had registered health professionals, so we have a lot of applications from, for example, nursing, physiotherapy, but we're also widening our sort of remit to include people from social work, other allied health professionals, commissioners and policymakers. And one of our criteria is that you have to be employed by a health or care organisation in Greater Manchester. So that includes NHS trusts. It also includes local authorities where care is provided, and also some voluntary and community organisations. If you're unsure about your eligibility in terms of any of the criteria, please do drop us a line, because that is a common question that we get. It might not be something that we can go into detail here if there are specific queries. We can answer sort of general queries about eligibility, but if your particular case, you're unsure about something, do drop us an email and we can give you some more information. So in terms of academic supervision for your pre-doctoral fellowship, the idea of the fellowship is that it provides you with research time, access to expertise in the applied research collaboration, to build that relationship with a supervisor and prepare an application for a PhD. So we're looking for people who do really want to go on and do a PhD ideally, and that could be funded by NIHR itself, or it could be another competitive funding stream. So as part of the application process, what we would like you to do is try and name at least one academic supervisor on your application form. We suggest that you can have up to 3 supervisors, and some people like to have maybe a clinical or other academic supervisor on board, but we'd like you to have at least one supervisor that is from the applied research collaboration. We have a number of people who have supervised previously. We're also looking for new supervisors within the ARC, and we're just about to put a list together of people who are able to supervise the next cohort. So if you do want more information about who is a potential supervisor, if you're not already aware of who that might be, you can either drop us a line by email, or if you want to put your name in the chat, we can gather that information, and we will make sure that you get a list of potential supervisors. So we do get a lot of questions about supervision and who might be eligible to be a supervisor. Again, if you've got specific questions, or if there are people from different organisations that you'd like on your supervisory team and you're a little bit unsure, please do let us know about that, and we will we'll answer your query. I can see that Rose has got a hand up there. If you just want to pop either a question in the chat at the moment, or we can save the questions till the end, that would be absolutely fine. And then we'll try and answer all questions together, but I'm anticipating the question might be about supervision. So just while we're talking about supervisors, I think what we like to give a little bit of advice on who might make a good academic supervisor. So the key person that would help you through your pre-doctoral fellowship, but also your potential PhD. So this person might have a bit of experience of being a PhD supervisor before, it'd be good if you could identify someone who works for a higher education institution, who's had experience of supervising several PhD candidates previously. They might have experience in your health or clinical or care area, or they might have methodological expertise that you really want to tap into. You should try and choose someone who you can build a relationship and that you can maintain contact with them. That's key. I think communicating with your supervisor regularly is quite a key thing for the pre-doctoral fellowship, but also for your PhD as well. And it should be somebody who really could be the supervisor for a PhD going forward. It doesn't have to, we don't stipulate that you've got to include that person in your PhD application, but it should be somebody who would potentially be suitable to be a supervisor of a PhD. And those really are the only sort of criteria that we have around academic supervision. As I just mentioned briefly, in terms of finding your supervisors, you could contact us at ArcGM, who can provide you a list of people within ARC who are potential supervisors, but you can also contact people at other universities, or if you've got links through your day job, you might want to see who could act as an additional supervisor. Like I said, if people want to put their information in the chat, we can gather that information and send a list of potential supervisors out to you, or you can drop us an email. So I'm just going to hand over to Michelle for this point. I'll keep control of the slides if that's all right. Michelle, you just told me to move on, but I just wanted to ask Michelle if she would speak a little bit about putting together a successful application.
Yes, thanks, Ross. Thanks for that very clear talk through about our application process. We tend to talk about things that are likely to get you a successful application or move you to a successful application. We often talk about the 4 Ps. These are not mine. I haven't come up with that. Is one NIHR often talk about these 4 areas, and it's important to pay attention to all 4. So the first is the person, and that's you, your potential, as a clinical academic, what your career ambitions are, where you are at the moment, how much support you have to realise your ambitions. And we're looking for people who have the ambition to put in a doctoral application. I think the clue is in the title. It's a pre-doctoral fellowship, and the reason that we offer pre-doctoral fellowships is we recognise that it takes quite a lot of time to build the right team around you to support you, to get the right questions, but also for you to understand what's involved in the PhD that you want to do. So that's about you, who you are, what your ambitions are, where you would like to be, and we're looking to support people who would like to be have academic ambitions, and you need to articulate what that academic ambition is. The place then, these all link. So if you are clear about what your academic ambitions are, then you need to be in the right place. So that is, it doesn't have to be that you're connected with, say, the University of Manchester. It might be that for your particular area of research, the researchers that you want to connect with are not in Greater Manchester. There may be other researchers across nationally or indeed internationally that you want to connect with. However, you are choosing to apply to do an NIHR pre-doctoral fellowship. So the reason that we say that at least one of your supervisors needs to be located within the ARC, it's that we want you to be able to take advantage of the whole network of ARC resources and to be able to support you with your PhD application. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you have a point of connection within the ARC. So that's why we want you to be in the best place possible for you to fulfill your academic ambitions, but also linked to all of the ARC resources that we have. Clearly, the proposal is important, and when we say proposal, one of the challenges with a pre-doc fellowship is you need to look forward to have an idea of what your PhD might be about. You don't have to have a fully worked up PhD proposal. that's not the expectation. However, you do need to have sufficient idea of what a PhD might look like for you to be able to say what bits will you do in the pre-doctoral work that will support your development. Let me give you an example of that. For example, you might have already done a review of the literature and know that there's no evidence about a particular area of clinical practice, and that you've but you may not know whether that gap or that question is endorsed by patients or the public that you're working with. So you might want to say, I know that there's research evidence to suggest that we should do X, but I'm not sure if X would be acceptable. I don't know the best way to research that, and I'd like to have some patient and public involvement work. That's one example. Or it could be the other way, that you could find that you've done some patient and public engagement, that you're very clear with the colleagues that you're working with that there's a clear need, but what you don't know is the existing research literature and whether somebody's already done that. So you might want to do a review that supports your work. Those are the things that would be putting into your pre-doctoral proposal to support ultimately what your PhD will be about. And then the final P is ultimately we would like to support you to be successful in achieving funding for your PhD. So you need to be indicating within your application that there are potential funding streams. Again, it doesn't have to only be NIHR doctoral opportunities, of which we would be definitely wanting to support you to do that, but equally other funders may be more relevant, the charitable trusts, other British Heart Foundation, just off the top of my head, other charity organisations. It's about, again, linking what your personal ambitions are, the place where you are, the type of research that you want to do, and your potential for getting funding, and being able to say that you're aware that there are a number of avenues to get funding. Next slide, please, Ross. I hope that's okay. So what should you include? So hopefully, when I've just done those 4 Ps, the things that you include in your application fall out and seem obvious. So your professional background, what interest you've had in research so far, any aspects that you've been involved. Have you been involved in quality improvement projects? Have you been involved in journal clubs in your area? Have you helped to recruit to trials? Anything that has and can demonstrate that you've already dipped a toe, so to speak, in research endeavour in any way. Your supervisory support, it's really key that you've got supervisory support in place, because once you get a pre-doctoral fellowship, you will the time moves very quickly, as it does with all of these things, and having your supervisors in place right at the beginning will really help you. So start now to think about that supervisory support, and have realistic timelines. It's good to be ambitious, but it's also good to have a realistic time frame of what that ambition translates into, and think about what sort of training needs you might need. If you have ambitions and you've got this project, what training, you don't have to have a clear idea. There is a training budget attached to a training element attached to the pre-doctoral fellowship, so it's good for you to have a sense of what, if there is training that you would like to factor into it, how that will go with all of the other timelines. And as I say, the clear thing about the work that you'll do within the fellowship and how that work will ultimately contribute to the PhD plan. They're hopefully the things that will pull together a very well-rounded application. Next slide. I think that's my bit open, and hopefully that's left enough time for us to answer questions, Ross.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Michelle. I'm just going to stop the presenter mode there just so that I can see the chat and see who's got their hands up. So I know that people have have got their hand up there. So Joanna, would you be able to help me just identify who had their hand up first?
Yeah, so Lisa had a hand up first and then Andrew.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Lisa. See, Lisa's put her chat.
Maybe Lisa.
Hello.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I've got about 10 questions, but I obviously don't want to monopolise all the time. So can I ask someone, put some in the chat? They don't obviously necessarily, but they might be really quick. So one of it, I think was quite specific. So I'm only band 6. I've done a master's, but one of the things that I identified that I'd need to develop during this time would be the clinical leadership aspect as well as the formal research training. And I wondered, obviously, apart from sort of working with a clinical supervisor, if that was something that you suggest, you know, in terms of doing something formal, or would you suggest just looking at like an MRes module? Because I know that's something that's obviously listed, you know, in terms of the application is developing those clinical leadership skills as well. Yeah, how would you suggest that's done?
Shall I take that question, Ross? So the first thing to say is that you will notice in the guidance that there is no band that isn't, you know, it doesn't matter what band you are. We wouldn't be expecting a certain band to apply or not. It's not something that we factor in our decision making. The most important thing, and when the most important thing is that you have shown that you are interested in research and you're connecting in with all opportunities within your environment to be involved in research, and that you've been leading from a research point of view in. And that could be that you've got connected in with your organisation's way of dealing with which I can see your MFT, Lisa, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm a specialist alcohol nurse.
Ah, right, Lisa, I thought I recognised your name. Hi, Lisa. Yeah, so connecting in with the research champions, how, you know, so we wouldn't expect a specific leadership qualification. I hope that's answered your question, but we'd be looking to see how you've been connecting research activity in your own area.
Yeah, that's really helpful. That's fine. That allays my worries about that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Thank you to you both. So Andrew, I think you had a question there.
Hi guys. Yeah, thank you. I suppose I was just trying to understand what's the difference between this PCAF and the kind of more conventional national PCAF, and because I was hoping to submit this time but didn't get a chance to because I didn't get my supervisors together, and listening to the conversation I didn't know if this could be an opportunity then in place of the traditional PCAF, if you will.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that one, Ross. If you so the PCAF and the national PCAF, there are two types of national PCAF. There's a standard, which is not dissimilar to the thing that we offer regionally. So the differences are obviously the PCAF. The standard 1 or 2 year national pre-clinical and practitioner academic fellowship. That's what the PCAF stands for those who are not familiar. It's a national competition. This is a regional competition. This is you're absolutely right. This is an opportunity to connect with local researchers. So, for example, the national competition wouldn't necessarily help broker a relationship with new supervisors. Regional, we do. There's a regional network of pre-doctoral fellows that is managed within the ARC. So you get a peer-to-peer support that's within Greater Manchester network. So the short answer is one's national, one's regional, and all of the things that fall out from there in terms of the regional competition versus national competition. There's another, the PCAF bridging is a slightly different PCAF, and there's no reason why you can't get a pre-doctoral fellowship here and then go for a national PCAF as well if you feel that there's more pre-doctoral work you need to do, because it depends where you start. So there's also something called a PCAF bridge if you've got a lot of research experience and you just need a top up to get you over the line for your PhD application. So there's a number of cases, but hopefully that's answered your question.
Yeah,
Andrew.
yeah. So this is like the standard, like you say. It's not necessarily like the bridging PCAF equivalent.
No.
Okay.
No, it's similar to the full standard PCAF, but it's on a regional GM footprint. So you can only apply for it, as Ross said, if you're within the Greater Manchester footprint.
And within, sorry, I'm hogging time, I realise, but within institutions within the Greater Manchester footprint, then is it the universities that sit within that Greater Manchester boundary line?
No, you just need to be employed by an organisation that sits within, but the universities can be, which you can have a wider reach, but you do need to have a coordinating supervisor within the ARC.
Right, brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Really good questions, and they are. We do get similar questions each year, and people ask if they can apply for this opportunity as well as others, and you can apply for whichever opportunities you feel you see fit. So that's fine. I think Nicole had a question. I also just want to give Rose the opportunity in case there's still a question there. So Nicole, next, please.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much. So my question is more about the supervision. So I'm a dietitian working at Salford, Northern Care Alliance, and I have lots and lots of quality improvement experience, which I've done with King's College, but part of my clinical job role. Would that count? Because I know there's research and there's quality improvement, but slightly different methods that we use, but that would be okay, yeah.
I think you should include all that as experience, so the people reviewing your application can see what you've been involved with sort of academically, in addition to your normal sort of duties. There are a whole different definitions around what research is, and we can sort of nitpick about.
Definitely. Depends who you talk to.
Yeah.
And then the other question was, my supervisor would be the academic supervisor. She's my she's our operational lead, but she's got a PhD, and she has done some very large piece of research in the past, but I don't think she's got a link to a university.
Okay, so I think that's absolutely fine for her to be a supervisor. What we would need is we would generally say your primary academic supervisor should be somebody who could be your PhD supervisor. So and this is just for the pre-doctoral fellowship. So it would be good to have that conversation, so that we can take that offline and we can discuss. But you would also need somebody within ARC in addition to that person, just to make sure that you've got sort of that academic link as well. So we can discuss that, Nicole, if you wanted to drop me an email and we can explore.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Ross.
No problem. So I think Erin has a question.
Hi, I was just wanting to follow on from what Andrew said, really. So with the two national ones, you've got the clinical one where they allow 20% clinical while you're doing it full time, and then the non-clinical one. So is yours available to both, but you don't pay for it for the clinical work? It's more of a 50-50?
So Michelle, do you?
So so I think what you're asking is, you're absolutely right. There's a development certainly within the clinical PCAF of a recognition that there is, if you're full time, 20% of your time is within that funding accepted. That effectively the NIHR are paying for 1 day a week for you to work clinically within a full time PCAF. Here within the regional, within the ARC pre-doctoral, the 50% that's funded is expected to be 50% academic and focused on PhD development, academic training skills. We wouldn't be envisaging any clinical work to happen during that 50%. We would expect the 50%, the other 50% to hold your clinical sessions. We do acknowledge that sometimes that's a challenge, especially if you're working less than full-time hours, which is why we're able to be flexible about whether the pre-doctoral fellowship is taken over 1 year or 2 years. So you can have 50% or 25% for 2 years to allow some conversations. We're also flexible about how you use your sessions, so that you know that your 50%, there are different models of making of using those sessions, because we acknowledge that depending on where you're working and the timelines and the work pressures, sometimes some times are busier than others, so there's some flexibility on how you work that, but the short answer is we don't fund any of the clinical hours.
So it could look like a sabbatical. Kind of, you know, so rather than taking it 1 day or 2 days a week, you could take it as a block.
So people have done it in very different ways. We've had people who do 2 days every week. Some people do a block, because just the off duty or the way that they work, you do a 4-day block and then have that 4-day block per month, or you know, it's banked hours. And what will be really helpful in a pre-doctoral application is if you've had that conversation upfront and early with your line manager about realistically how it will be, how you will be able to ring fence and boundary that time so that you get it. It won't be looked favourably if you think if there isn't good line manager support and that you've not really thought through how it could work in your context, in your situation.
Yeah, and if we're less than full-time hours now, can we top up to full-time so that we're take away from clinical less? Is that
yeah, so that we've had people who've done that. So for I'm not quoting a real example here, but
yeah.
if you work 2 days a week at the moment and you have the capacity to work more hours, and your service would like you to do that, and if you want to increase to 4 days, with 2 of those days funded by the ARC pre-doctoral fellowship, there's no reason why that can't be accommodated. Okay, so that right. You extend you use it as a mechanism to extend your hours rather than find somebody to pay backfill. Does that answer your question?
Definitely. Yeah, great, thank you.
Very much. That's a really useful question. We do get a lot of questions about funding as well, and I think the advice I would give you, start those discussions. Think about how much time you need to do your pre-doctoral fellowship. We recommend not doing it in less than 25% sort of full-time equivalent. Yeah. That's why we ask people in the application form to select one of 2 options: 25% over 2 years or 50% over 1 year. We can supply, well, we can contribute up to £20,000 per fellowship for backfill in terms of funding, in addition to a £2,000 training budget. So I know there are a couple of questions about funding in the chat as well, and then I'm going to come to Rose's question about experience. So in terms of how the funding is managed, as I mentioned, we ask people to choose one of 2 options in the application form. You might not have been able to have a glance at the application form just yet. And we ask you to work out that agreement with your supervisor in your normal role, and also to get the agreement of your line manager and ask your finance department at your organisation to calculate the costs that we would need to reimburse. And we reimburse on a sort of monthly basis. I think it's in arrears. So we sort of set up an offer letter detailing the time commitment, and then that's paid back to your organisation. So you don't need to necessarily do anything apart from get the application in with those figures in, speak to your finance department. Some people go to straight to finance and discuss with them. Some people might need to just discuss with their supervisor first, and then they'll be directed. But just have those conversations with people in your organisation to start with. And in terms of funding for training and conference attendance, so there's a £2,000 budget per fellowship, and that can be taken over the course of the fellowship as per your needs, really. So if you identify training courses that you want to attend, it's good, again, just to have the discussions with your academic supervisor just to make sure that it's the type of thing that you should be going on to satisfy your training needs. It might be that there's a conference that you want to attend, and we can support those. So generally what we do is we would book those on your behalf. And again, in terms of finance, it's about coming to us within the ARC, who keep hold of the training budget for you. We organise things, and we organise travel and things like that, and then it makes it a little bit easier for you. So we don't give the £2,000 training budget to your organisation. We keep hold of the training budget, and then we pay for things on your behalf. So that's how the funding works for the training budget. So I'm just going to come very quickly to Rose, because I know that there's a question there about experience, and it links to, I think, what somebody said about earlier in terms of quality improvement and other activities. So Rose has asked, she doesn't have any research experience. She's just beginning to dip your feet into research and carrying out a small project, which hopes to present at a conference later in the year. Would I be eligible to apply, or would this invalidate my application chance? No, you're absolutely more than welcome to apply. Applications will be judged in terms of a number of criteria, one of them being experience. However, it may be that your level of experience it compares very well to another person who doesn't have as good an application as you, or as strong an application as you, and so it's very individual. So what I would say is try and think about your CV and what you've already done, and think how do these things fit in with what I want to do in my PhD, or what do I want to achieve out of the pre-doctoral fellowship. And often you've done more than you think, so it's worth just pulling all those things together. Now, it's worth just mentioning as well that we do have another program, our internship program, which is not a funded position, but we do offer people internships to come and work with us for up to a year, to get some time to work, to prepare if people are just feel as though they're not quite ready for the pre-doctoral fellowships, but they want to do some research and they want to dip their toe in. We do have research internships, so those are things that we can discuss as well on a separate occasion. If people want more information on that, you can drop me a line. We've just in January, we've just started our new cohort of interns, so it might be that I can link you up with some people to speak to about those opportunities as well. I hope that answers your question there, Rose, but if you've got something else that you want to ask, then please do. And again, feel free to email me. I can have a conversation with you separately if that's helpful. So there was another question, I think. Do we need to use referencing in the application? So I think are we talking about academic referencing there? So I think that was Lisa. I think, yeah. So if we do ask you to provide references for thanks, Lisa. So we do ask you to provide any references. You can keep them to a minimum, the ones that are really relevant. I think that's probably quite an important point. We don't ask you for a massive long reference list, but 3 or 4 key references that you'd want to include in your application, really important pieces of work that you want to reference, then do include those. And we use the Vancouver style of formatting for references. So if you have a quick Google, you should be able to find that referencing style. Just having a quick scan of the chat to see if we have any other questions. And Lisa, you've still got your hand up, so if you want to ask another question, please feel free.
Oh, thank you very much. So it was basically a bit of an odd one. It's that so I'm a specialist alcohol nurse. And my team is nurse-led, and they've recently expanded, and they are very interested, I think, in service development, very compassionate, very patient-focused, and would benefit hugely, I think, from obviously having that input in the team in general. However, there is no kind of research section, there isn't a sort of logical person that I could maybe shadow. They would be in a completely other organisation. So I've started making kind of provisional contacts, kind of cold calling people. But they are, like one's in King's College, one's in Liverpool, and I was just worried about that becoming a bit disconnected to Manchester, because so alcohol is obviously a big part of my proposal, but like military support of military veterans is the other one, which is what my research has been done previously. And I think, yeah, I'm just worried about how to link that back to MFT, who, I'm part of the Armed Forces strategy. I think I've got good links. I think I've got good research experience. And the one thing I think I'm struggling with is this sort of consolidation of it all being around MFT and Greater Manchester.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want me to answer that question?
Yeah, please do.
So, two things, Lisa. Is the first is to be able to, because your employer is MFT, you don't have to link it back, but you do have to articulate why this research is strategically important to your organisation. And you're employed by the organisation, and as you quite rightly say, there will be strategies that you're able to quote to say this fits with the direction that we want to go in and the support that we do. I don't, not knowing the project that you're specifically talking about, but there is something about being clear on the application that your work aligns with the MFT strategy.
Thank you. I definitely think it does, but yeah,
which I'm sure that you will be able to do. So if you're clear in that it aligns. The second thing is then looking at and Ross will send you the list of supervisors and doing some work looking at the ARC-GM website, and you'll see on there are things around health inequalities, which immediately, if you're working around alcohol use, you're going to be working with a vulnerable group of people who have many health inequalities. So I can immediately see connections with the work that ARC-GM do, and the application is your opportunity to make those connections and say what does, and it might be that when you look at ARC you think actually there's nobody there that will support my work. That doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be having the conversation, because the point that I would make about a pre-doctoral application is it's not just one shot at the goal. Is that pre-doctoral applications, as Andrew was saying, there's a PCAF, there's a PCAF bridging, there's the internship programme, there's the national internship programme. There are many opportunities to be able to get a foot onto the clinical academic ladder or the practitioner academic ladder. So and this is a mechanism to start having those conversations. So even if you're not successful with this application, the process of pulling together those conversations of what can the ARC offer you in terms of the project that you're doing, who in that supervisory team can offer you support. And what I would be thinking is not just think about the topic that you're working with, but the methodologies that you want to work with. So if you're doing an evaluation of services, or if what you're doing is something around how best to deliver services to a population, then organisational care, the theme, might be the best theme. There are themes within the ARC that are about how you organise services, how you evaluate services, rapid evaluation of evidence. So there's things around methodological expertise that you might. So that would be my other comment, Lisa, is think about what methods people can help you with, and so it doesn't have to be that their research is in alcohol per se, but the skills that they bring can help you understand your world.
That's really helpful. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, just the other question, when it's talking about clinical leadership, you've definitely addressed that point, thank you. But, if people are thinking about doing a formal module as part of their training, do you recommend certain things, that are part of the MRes programme, and do they have to be University of Manchester programmes? Or would you, recommend that in the firstly kind of thing? Thank you.
So, I mean, Ross, please feel free to come in, but certainly no, we don't. It doesn't have to be the University of Manchester. We as a capacity building team don't recommend particular or endorse particular because it would be impossible to know that. What we do recommend, though, is that you have a conversation with the supervisory group that you have around you to decide what the best, what will add value to your pre-doctoral application. And what I mean by what will add value is you want something so that you don't use up all the time within the pre-doctoral fellowship doing one module or one element of study at the detriment of the other bits of work that you want to do, because it's not intended to be an educational qualification that you're getting with a pre-doctoral fellowship. So any training or modules that you do need to add to the overall ability for you to get a PhD. Would you agree, Ross? Yeah.
Yeah, I would do, and I would discuss with your supervisors which is the best training opportunity for you, and it might be that there's something that's provided as a short course over 1 or 2 days in person that will satisfy your training needs, you know, quite something more intense. Yeah, if you do undertake the module and you do it by assessment, you will, you know, you could use that towards a master's qualification if you don't already have one, but also you could get access to the material, the training material, the module, and not take the assessment. So there are different ways around, you know, the training, but detail those things. I think that is one of the things that we've probably had a lack of in people's applications previously, is a clear training plan as to what they really need to upskill on. And it might be something as simple as trying to understand how to do patient and community involvement and engagement, and we do have quite good infrastructure within ARC that can support with that, so that might be a training opportunity for you. So it's not always just doing an MRes module that will be the training that you want to do, but do detail those kind of things in your application. I just want to also come back to your point about when we were talking about linking back to strategies and making sure that you've got a link in there to what your organisation, what the objectives of the organisation are. And I just wanted to, I know we've had quite a focus on one of the large trusts in Manchester, MFT, but we also just want to make sure that people from other organisations do get that opportunity to really try and find out what their objectives are, and they're clearly not going to be the same in each trust or each organisation. We're not also just talking about NHS trusts, we're talking about local authorities. So try and get the official strategy documents if these are being prepared. Speak to people in your area who can give you an idea of what the focus is going to be on next, and where the organisation wants to do some research, because the point about capacity building is that we can increase the number of people in different organisations to do the research, but also to increase the volume of research that's done in the areas that are needed. So really do have a look at the strategy documents that are going around in your organisation. Again, it's difficult for us to give any advice on that because they'll all be different. We don't know the ins and outs. So if there are people on the call that are from smaller NHS trusts or local authorities where you do need a little bit of sort of signposting, or if you're unclear where to start, again, you can drop us a line. We can try and help with things like that. We know that some of the smaller trusts, NHS trusts, and some of the local authorities might not have research departments that are as geared up as some of the larger trusts, so we want to be able to try and help with that.
Absolutely, and Ross, that's such an important point. And the other thing to say is that when we shortlist for pre-doctoral fellowships, the applications are completely redacted. So we don't know the organisation you're coming from. We don't know anything about your protected characteristics. We shortlist purely on the answers you give us. All of the other information, it's not the case that you're definitely going to be more successful from one organisation than the other. We do our best to make sure that it's a level playing field, so to speak. Is that a reasonable thing to say? Is that a good example? Yeah.
So Erin, I think you had another question.
Hi, this is just to go off of what Michelle said, but for Lisa, if you're looking at shadowing research ongoing at MFT, that may not be linked to yours, but can help support the theories around it. I can put my email in the chat because I'm a clinical research nurse in Wythenshawe. So if we wanted to kind of offer some peer-to-peer support, and you know, I'm just in a research area, not in a clinical area, so you know, it's always good to build those relationships. And yeah, I guess along the same lines, the way that I'd looked at it is, you know, developing clinical leadership. As I've just done a master's, I don't want to do any more units. So I thought, okay, I can demonstrate that through a portfolio. I can, you know, trial a new pathway management that is being used in another area to, you know, to help with some, you know, issues with inequality that's going on in some uptake areas. And, you know, and I guess you know, I'd be able to chat to Lisa about that in a bit more detail, so I can pass on my email to her. But
that's brilliant. Thank you, Erin. That's really, really useful. And I think that is one of the benefits actually of the pre-doc fellowship scheme, and also when people are doing internships and PhDs, is that there's a cohort of people who together each think they have, you know, different needs, yes, but also there are some common ground where people think, oh, you know, they've got burning questions that they want to ask, and then, or they've got issues that they're coming across during the pre-doctoral fellowship, and we have a bit of a peer-to-peer support network, and that's really useful. So to be able to sort of offer support at this stage is really, really welcome. Thank you. Andrew, I think you had a question.
Yeah, sorry, I do have another one. Yes, please. It was just to ask, I've not actually started filling out the detail on it of the application, but with regards, I'm thinking again, sorry to keep harking back, but in the national NIHR application, how many people do you have to have in place in terms of I'm thinking, because you've got to get a lot of documents signed off in that process before it's kind of submitted. Is it the same kind of level of individuals need to sign it to say we support this application, and referees and finance officers, etc.?
Yes, so there are a number of things that you'll need to make relationships with these people, I think, quite early on, like we mentioned, supervisors. So you'll need at least one named supervisor, and you need at least one supervisor from ArcGM. So that's why it's worth trying to make those links now. The other people that you will need to sign off your application, we ask, although we do have an online form, we know that there are difficulties in passing online forms to different people to sign off, and it's quite difficult with some of the infrastructure that we use. So we use an online form that is for you to complete, and then we ask you for your line manager or supervisor, or the manager of your service, somebody who's able to sign off and support you in applying for this fellowship, to email us with some standard wording and say that they support you, and that's to the generic ARC email address, and that's in the application for the guidance for applicants on the website. The other person will be somebody from your finance department, just to say that the figures are correct and that you've not just put your salary out of the air. So those are the people. It's always good to have somebody who can act as a referee and add a few words in there. So yeah, also it might be somebody like a supervisor, and they could include a few words in that email. It might be somebody else who you've made a link with. So those are the key people. Yeah. And
in the same way, as do you want them pre the 18th at 5 o'clock as well?
So we ask for all the emails of support and everything to be by the same deadline. Yeah. So that's 5 o'clock on the 18th of May. If people, we know that can be a barrier, and people go off and leave, and we can have difficulties with that. So if that does start to happen, I think it's just about that clear communication. If you can just let us know that you're having difficulty with things like that, we can try and help you to try and to get those things. And then we know that, again, that is sometimes a barrier to people being able to apply. It's the fact that sometimes the support, people do want to support, but there are such pressures within the system to be able to release people, even though we're providing some of the funding for backfill. We know that can create issues. So we're trying to make relationships with lots of different organisations to work out how these things can be helped. So, and it will be different for different departments and different organisations. So, but if you're coming across particular issues,
yeah,
do contact.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Thanks again.
So we've just 3 or 4 minutes to go. I just wanted to give the last chance if anybody's got any other comments or questions. If not, I'll just summarise. So we will make this recording of the presentation available on the ArcGM website. There is a presentation, as I mentioned at the start, from last year. There's also on the website, there's some biographies of people who've been through not just the pre-doctoral fellowships, but also the internships. And we do have another question and answer session booked for sometime in May. The details are on the website as well, and on the flyer that people may have seen going around. In the meantime, if people do have specific questions, feel free to contact me. I put my email in the chat just there. It's in the guidance for applicants as well. If you spot something that doesn't make sense to you in the guidance or on the website, please do let me know. It might be something, a common issue that people think, I don't quite know what is meant by that. Please do ask for clarification. I don't have any leave until after applications have closed, but so I'm around to respond to queries. So please do get in contact. So if nobody else has any more questions or queries, I think we'll close the session there. But I'm sure Michelle will be happy to take queries as well on an ad hoc basis. But if you come to me first, I will sort of triage things that I can answer, I will do. If there are more technical questions or queries, and also try and make links with the people who within your organisations may be the research champions. So these might be people who you've received information from before. They might have done the pre-doctoral fellowship. Try and find who those people are and have a chat to them and see what you might need to do in the next few weeks to put in a good application.
Absolutely, thanks, Ross. And I would also say that in the next question and answer session, if you please invite your line manager or a supervisor. These question and answer sessions are open to everyone and anyone. So if you're interested in applying, absolutely. But equally, if you're thinking about you'd like to support somebody to apply, please, invite your manager along if they've got questions, or your supervisors. It's an open platform for any question.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good luck with the
Thank you,
applications.
guys.
Thank you.